Hi, everyone. Welcome to our MyIBD Learning virtual program, Biosimilars, What You Need to Know. My name is Alyssa Strauss. I'm the Associate Director of Adult Education and Resources at the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation, and I'm honored to be moderating the program today. If you're currently taking a biologic or you're considering a biologic, you may have heard about biosimilars. Biosimilars are a type of FDA-approved biologic medication that have no clinical meaningful differences from a biologic already approved by the FDA. In this program, you're going to hear from our expert presenters to learn more about biosimilar medications, what you need to know when switching to one, and how you can become more knowledgeable about what biosimilar medications are currently available. On behalf of the foundation, thank you so much for joining. Before we get started, just a few items of housekeeping to review. The information shared today is meant to be for educational purposes only and should not replace any guidance or advice given by your healthcare team. Just wanted to have a brief moment to say thank you to our supporters. We have Boehringer Ingelheim and Sandoz. Thank you so much for supporting our educational initiatives like this one and supporting our mission to finding cures for Crohn's and ulcerative colitis and improving the quality of life of those who are affected by these diseases. So I'm privileged to introduce the presenters of our program today. We have with us 3 experts in the field of IBD who serve as members on our patient education committee from the Foundation's National Scientific Advisory Committee. So first we'll have with us Dr. Casey Huff, who will kick off the program with an intro to understanding biosimilars. Dr. Huff is an associate professor of medicine at the IBD Center at Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis. Next, we'll hear from Dr. Harry Thomas, who will present on switching to biosimilars. Dr. Thomas moved to Austin in 2014, practiced at Baylor Scott & White, where he was an assistant professor of medicine at Texas A&M, prior to joining Austin Gastroenterology in 2017. His clinical interests are inflammatory bowel diseases, and he has served as a site principal investigator for multiple clinical trials in Crohn's and ulcerative colitis. And last but not least, we have with us Dr. Rajesh Shah. He's a staff physician and adjunct clinical assistant professor at the Baylor Scott & White Health System, also in Austin, Texas. And he'll be reviewing with us the currently approved biosimilars and what's in the pipeline. Listed here are our speakers' financial disclosures. Thank you all for being with us today. All right. We will now welcome our first presenter, Dr. Casey Huff, who will give us an understanding of what biosimilars are all about. You can take it away, Casey.
Thank you, Alyssa. So first, to understand biosimilars, we first need to understand what a biologic is. Biologics are therapies that are made using living cell or living materials to treat a disease. In the case of inflammatory bowel disease, our biologics are antibodies, and antibodies are proteins. Antibodies against different inflammatory cytokines are identified, and we use a living cell line to make the protein or the antibody. And this purified antibody then becomes the biologic therapy. Next slide. So what is a biosimilar? Biosimilars are therapies that are also made with living material. They replicate the existing biologics and how they work and how they are administered. Since biologics and biosimilars are proteins, they can't be 100% replicated or copied. When we talk about biosimilars, we often refer to the reference drug. That is the original biologic that the biosimilar replicates. For example, Remicade or infliximab is the reference drug for the biosimilars Inflectra, Renflexis, and Avzola. How are biosimilars similar? They're recognized as by the body as the same medication. When we think about drug levels and antibody tests, those tests are the same for the biosimilar and the reference medication. The way that the drug is taken or the route of administration is also the same. If the reference drug is given through an IV, the biosimilar is an IV as well. The dosing and schedules are. Additionally, the way that your body sees and acts in response to this medication is the same. I have this picture here of two keys and a lock. So I like to think about this as you may have two keys that look different, but they're able to open the same lock. That's very similar to what happens in biologics and biosimilars. The way that they're acting is the same, even though the part that's not important, or on this part, the handle of the key, looks a little different. So there may be changes in the inactive part of the medication that are different between the biosimilar and the reference drug. How are biosimilars approved? Biosimilars still undergo robust review by the FDA. To be approved, there must be no meaningful difference between the biosimilar and the reference drug in their safety, purity, effectiveness, and potency. The FDA approves biosimilars through an abbreviated pathway. The goal is to demonstrate that there's biosimilarity between the biosimilar and the reference product. The FDA approval process is accelerated, requiring fewer studies and fewer patients in each study, and this leads to a decreased cost of bringing this medication to the market. There are some biosimilars that are considered to be interchangeable. Biosimilars are considered to be interchangeable when a study is able to show that switching between the reference drug and the biosimilar multiple times results in no additional risks compared to staying on the reference drug. Manufacturers actually have to put in a special request to the FDA in order to be designated as an interchangeable biosimilar. Interchangeability is an evolving process. So why do we have biosimilars? What are the benefits of them? Biosimilars have the potential to reduce cost of administering healthcare. This leads to greater access of treatments and greater treatment options for our patients.
Thank you so much, Dr. Huff. I appreciate you spending the time to talk to us a little bit more about biosimilars and understanding what they're all about. So next, we're going to bring up Dr. Harry Thomas, and he's going to walk us through a little bit about what you need to know about switching to biosimilars.
Thank you, Alyssa. So we're going to be discussing the process of switching to a biosimilar. Now, what does switching mean? This can really refer to one of three things. It could mean switching from the reference product to a biosimilar of the same class. It can also mean switching from a biosimilar to another biosimilar of the same class. And then finally, it could also refer to switching from the biosimilar to the reference product itself. Now, when we talk about switching, generally we are assuming that there's going to be no loss of effectiveness and no meaningful difference in terms of the efficacy or safety. Next slide, please. So why do patients actually switch to biosimilars? This can happen due to a number of reasons. For example, if a patient changes their insurance, they may find that their new insurance does not cover, for example, the reference product, but does cover one of the biosimilars, and that may necessitate a change. Alternatively, as shown in the middle here, without changing insurance, the insurance plan itself may no longer cover the reference drug and mandate that patients switch to one of the biosimilar options. And then finally, there may be situations in which patients elect to switch to a biosimilar for potential cost savings. Next slide, please. So can you be switched without your consent or approval? Well, really, you should be getting a notice from your insurance company to let you know that the change is occurring. However, as Dr. Huff mentioned, there are some biosimilars that are designated as interchangeable, and these may be automatically substituted without consultation or notification to the prescriber. And the exact laws about switching from reference product to biosimilar may vary depending on your state. Next slide. So is it safe to switch? We do know from a number of studies now that the answer is yes. And in fact, multiple switches have been shown to be safe and effective. And this has involved study of not just reference drug to biosimilar, but from one biosimilar to another biosimilar, and from a biosimilar back to the reference drug. If you are switched or decide to switch, please do talk to your healthcare team about any concerns and, ask for more information to make an educated decision. Next slide. So, if you are faced with a notification from your insurance about a potential mandated switch, you're going to have a lot of questions on your mind. You're going to be wondering, why is your treatment changing? When is this going to be taking effect? You want to understand what's the name of the new treatment and, what might you expect with the change? This point below that is really quite important. Does your hospital or infusion center or medical group provide this treatment to patients? This is especially relevant with the intravenous biosimilars, specifically for Remicade and infliximab, because there are certain biosimilars of infliximab that may not be available at the infusion center where you've been receiving Remicade, for example, because of certain logistical and contracting reasons. So you would want to find out where you would need to be receiving those infusions. Below that, you obviously would want to know the expected cost of the new treatment, and especially if you've already been receiving copay assistance for your reference product or an existing biosimilar, you would want to know whether you could continue to receive copay assistance and support if you do make the switch to a biosimilar. You clearly want to know who to contact if you have questions about the medication administration, especially for the subcutaneous injections. And, for patients who are self-injecting, you will be having a different device from what you've been used to previously. So certainly expect to obtain education about the specific device and any differences from what you're used to. Next slide, please. So what to expect after switching? You're going to be assessed for your response to the medication in the exact same manner as you're used to from prior to switching to the biosimilar. Blood tests, imaging tests, colonoscopy. The target of remission remains the same, and the methods to assess for that remission are exactly the same. Below that, you'll see that we will continue to use the same drug monitoring tests as we do for the reference product. And Dr. Hufford alluded to that in her presentation. And then finally, we're obviously going to continue to monitor for side effects, which really, are expected to be similar to the reference product. Next slide, please. So what happens if you unfortunately develop a flare after changing to a biosimilar? Well, obviously, if you notice any difference in symptoms, immediately notify your healthcare team. The main question or the first question is to determine whether those symptoms are due to active inflammation from your inflammatory bowel disease versus some other possible etiology or cause. Now, one thing to be aware of is this phenomenon called the nocebo effect, which is kind of the opposite of the placebo effect. This nocebo effect is feeling like symptoms are coming on when you know there's been a change, if you change from the reference product to the biosimilar. And, this is something that's well recognized. And we, like to counsel our patients that, we do expect the efficacy, potential side effects to be the same as the reference product, so that they shouldn't expect, some deterioration in their quality of life or symptoms. Next slide, please.
Thank you so much, Dr. Thomas. Appreciate all the insight on switching. And last but not least, we have Dr. Shah here, who's going to talk a little bit more about those biosimilars that are currently available for IBD patients. So I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Shah.
Thank you very much. So Dr. Huff and Dr. Thomas both kind of already brought up these points, but I think it's great to just emphasize them again of biosimilars, what are they doing for patients and helping them save money? And there's different ways they're going to do this, and they're kind of interrelated. So one of the big ones is, if we're going to save money, we're going to try to lower cost. Part of that is just how the biosimilars are developed and tested and approved, that they're kind of shorter processes. So hopefully the manufacturer can get things to market quicker, be able to recoup some costs that way. Another is just more medications, more competition, market forces driving the prices down, manufacturers trying to distribute their drugs more. And then the other piece of this will be insurance coverage and what drugs are contracted with which insurances and what kind of costs are going to go in there. And one question that a lot of patients do have is, if I'm on a patient assistance program for, say, a reference product, are similar programs available for biosimilars? And that answer definitely is yes. So one great resource through the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation we found on the website, if you're able to scan this QR code or visit the link below, that'll lead you to some great resources there. Now, if we walk through the different biosimilars, and there's a lot of these, so hang in there. One is, most of the biosimilars are to the reference product adalimumab. The original trade name was Humira. This is one of the tumor necrosis factor, or TNF blockers. And as you can see, there are many biosimilars that have been made to this product. Walking through that, you can see the different brand names, the drug name, so it's taking adalimumab and then adding 4 different characters to the end of that just to designate what the medication is. And then you can see that some of these have that special interchangeable designation that's granted by the FDA and then kind of implemented at the state level. So again, this will vary by where you live, what state you're in, if these drugs can be swapped out. Next up is infliximab, our oldest medication here. Again, the reference product name was Remicade, another TNF blocker. Here we have a few less biosimilars, but again, these are ones you will likely come across if you're taking infliximab. One key point here, though, is none of these are interchangeable. So whoever your prescriber is should be notified if there's going to be a change that's requested. Next up is ustekinumab. So this is coming out of a different drug class now. We're looking at interleukin 12/13 inhibitors. This goes by the reference drug, or the brand trade name of Stelara. And here we have 4 biosimilars. Now, they're not technically on the market yet. They'll be coming soon. So these aren't ones you're going to see right now, but most likely sometimes next year, you may come across these medications. And again, there's a key here in that one of these is interchangeable. So again, you may encounter this medication and your prescriber may not be aware of that change. And finally, there are certainly other biologic medications that are available for treating IBD. There's the integrin receptor antagonist, the most common one being vedolizumab. There are not currently any biosimilars close to coming to market yet, but there certainly are ones that are in development. So this is something to kind of stay tuned for, because there may be medications that are coming in the future. There are certainly other TNF medications we use, but again, no biosimilars available at this time for those or in development. And then there are the somewhat different class of interleukin 23s. This is just targeting IL-23 as opposed to IL-12 and 23 from Stelara. And you may be on one of these medications, but again, there are no biosimilars for these, so you're going to be staying on the reference product.
All right, thank you, Dr. Shah. Thank you, Dr. Huff and Dr. Thomas, for sharing all your expertise with us. We hope you all learned a little bit more about biosimilars. I wanted to sort of bring everyone together now. We have a few very brief, commonly asked questions from patients and caregivers that they have about biosimilars, and I thought I'd sort of pose a question to each of you. Thank you. Dr. Huff wanted to share one question with you that we get pretty frequently. Are biosimilars just another word for a generic biologic? We kind of think that maybe it's a generic, but it's not. So can you really clear that up for us?
Yeah, that's a great question, Alyssa. And I think that our brains want to think about biosimilars as being generics, but medications that aren't biologics are synthetic. They're made of, they're a synthetic compound, they're made of chemicals. And so those can be replicated with 100% accuracy because it's just a combination of chemicals. Whereas the biologic therapies, they can't 100% be replicated because of the process that it takes to make them. The fact that we need to use a cell line or living cell to actually make the biologic and biosimilar, they're not exactly the same, so they're not really truly a generic.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Dr. Thomas, I know you talked a lot about switching, but what if there's a patient who's brand new to a medication, new to biologics? Would that patient necessarily start with the reference biologic, or can that patient go straight to a biosimilar?
Yes, that is a good question. Certainly, patients can start initially on a biosimilar. Now, they may find that when they're discussing the treatment options with their IBD provider in the office, they may hear one name being referenced, perhaps the reference product, because that's been around for longer. But then they come to find out that the insurance covers the biosimilar for that reference product. So they may end up on a biosimilar for the reference product that was alluded to. So just something to watch out for there. Now, that being said, with the Remicade biosimilars, since they have been around for a little longer, and some providers will have access to one or two of the biosimilars in the infusion facilities they usually refer patients to, they may hear not just the reference product, but also the biosimilar in those initial conversations in the office. But yeah, broadly speaking, certainly biosimilars can be used even for new starts.
Great, thank you. And then Dr. Shah, you shared with us a lot about all the different medications that are available. What can patients expect in the coming years as biosimilars become more and more common and more prevalent?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think you can expect those lists to get longer. So patients are going to be encountering a lot of different names. It will be really important to work with your gastroenterologist, their whole team. Make sure you really feel comfortable and understand what medications are being given, because more and more of these will come to market. You're going to run into all kinds of names, and a lot of this will end up being probably driven by insurance and what is covered, and as Dr. Thomas alluded to before, of what your infusion center perhaps has, and trying to kind of navigate that process with your care team. Additionally, there are some discussions, as Dr. Huff mentioned before, about maybe the way interchangeability is designated, that could even potentially change, where it's really just the manufacturers will need to demonstrate the drug is very, very similar without necessarily having to show switch studies, which is kind of one of the hurdles that are there now. And if that does change, then again, things coming to market might change.
Got it. So the definition of interchangeability might change, or all medications may become interchangeable. Is that what you're saying? Like it might not matter?
I think that's still getting sorted out, really. But if
Yeah.
the manufacturer can demonstrate that the medication is chemically and biologically very similar, they might be able to get that designation without doing switching studies.
Got it. Thank you. Well, thank you all so much. As our program is coming to an end, I want to encourage everyone to keep learning about biosimilars and about IBD medications. And I want to share with you a few of our foundation's resources so you can keep yourself educated and engaged in your care. So wanted to share with you a few resources here where you can learn more about biosimilars and IBD medications. The QR code at the top will take you directly to a page that talks a bit more, takes a deeper dive into biosimilars. We have frequently asked questions. We have a bunch of different video clips where you can learn more. Another great resource that we have is our IBD medication guide. So this is a guide that has all IBD medications, all FDA approved IBD medications, not just biologics, but all the other classes. So you could search for your drug. You can compare different drugs. You could search by brand name or drug name. And it's a great guide to help you learn a little bit more about the medication you're taking or thinking about taking. The foundation advocates all the time on behalf of patients and caregivers and healthcare providers that all patients deserve access to medically appropriate treatment at the right dose at the right time. So we'd love for you to join our advocacy network to learn more about how you can volunteer and help us pass important legislation to help patients access treatments at lower costs. So take a look at that QR code there. And then hopefully everyone's familiar with our IBD Help Center. We have trained specialists available to provide information and answer your questions about IBD. They're available by phone, email, even live chat, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern time. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions. If you are looking to connect with other patients or other caregivers, the foundation does offer support groups, both in person through our local chapters and virtual. So we encourage you to visit this website so you can find a group near you. And then finally, to keep learning about topics such as medications or diet, or surgery, we have our MyIBD Learning webpage, which you can search for recorded webinars like this one. You could also search for in-person or virtual programs to learn more. It's it's Crohn's Colitis Foundation.org/MyIBD Learning. So thank you again to our presenters, Dr. Huff, Dr. Thomas, Dr. Shah. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope you have a good rest of the day. Thanks so much.